The Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Check out DraftKings Pick 6. Also, thanks to our friends at the Fenton Bar and Grill. Stop there for lunch or maybe to check out their trashed wings. Matthew Rocchio is here. Matthew had a fabulous day yesterday. By the way, Tony La Russa is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Tell us about your Sunday, sir.
Well, the Cardinals had a very long day, and I was there for the majority of it. And then City had a game, and I was there for a chunk of that as well. And everyone walked away with 1 run/goal wins, and everyone's happy now in St. Louis.
Everybody today should be happy. So I asked Ali Marmol on Friday, I said, okay, if I could have magically guaranteed you on the first day of spring training that you would go into the All-Star weekend with a 1-game deficit in the wild card race. I said, I can guarantee you that, but that's what you're going to get. I said, would you have taken it? And he pondered the question for a long time, Matthew, like 30, 35, 40 seconds, long time. And then he said, Ali Marmol said, this is where I expected us to be. So I don't think he would have. I think that he felt like there was meat on the bone at the end of the first half, that the Cardinals could have done better than they did. He said, I expected to be here, and the players expected to be here. I thought that was an interesting response, and he didn't just come up with it. He put a lot of thought into it. What do you think? I have a tendency to agree, but then at the same time, I go, because I do think there was more there, but then you have to go back to the reality of the situation, that when you're in a situation like the Cardinals are this year, and they're going to be in this situation all year long, when you're giving players runway, when you're trying to find out what players can do, it's going to be a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you told me that this team was going to be +5, and by the way, in honor of it being both the end of the first half and also Tony La Russa joining us today, we will be referring to the Cardinals' record as +5, and none of that games over 500 stuff, because Tony La Russa said +5 or minus, whatever, what have you be. It was all about the math in the win versus the loss column. And so the Cardinals are +5, and that's how we will refer to their record this entire show in honor of TLR, who's joining us at 10:30. So +5 at the All-Star break is 100% playing with house money, because my prediction for this team, I believe, was at 84 wins preseason. And the fact that they're on pace to be better than that, that's quick little math question. Are they better than what I thought they were going to be? All right, then they're overplaying my expectations. And while there have been some problems, and we've spoken about the issues ad nauseum on here, things like Jordan Walker and some of the pitching questions, but when you look at the positives, and we saw a couple of them more on a long Sunday, and even maybe an inkling into something we haven't seen a lot this year that we could see later on in the second half, when you talk about their aggressiveness on the base paths, there's a lot of reasons to be positive about the Cardinals going into the break, despite the fact that we are talking about a very close but still a series loss to the Braves.
Yeah, and hey, they lose a couple of games by a run.
Yeah.
If there's one team in baseball that is probably not completely reflective of their record, it is the Braves. Now, granted, they have 4 starters that are hurt. So you are what your record says you are. But based on what they had at the beginning of the season, they thought they're going to have a decent Strider coming back. They thought they'd have a strong Schwellenbach all year long. Sale now is hurt. They thought that even though they lost Max Fried and Charlie Morton, that they would be in a pretty decent spot, but they aren't. But it's not like the Cardinals lost to the Colorado Rockies over the weekend. They lost to a really talented team, which, oh, by the way, has the next Johnny Bench in Sean Murphy.
Yeah, that's a little bit problematic. And I think a lot of people right now, considering the catcher situation in St. Louis, Sean Murphy having a big first 2 games was kind of like a little bit of the turning of the knife, because things are kind of coming to a head at the catcher spot right now. And I think there's some fans who, the last thing they wanted to see was Sean Murphy having a big game on that day of all days.
Yeah, the Cardinals didn't want to give up Nootbaar, and they decided, rather than Sean Murphy, they decided to go out and sign Wilson Contreras. And so that's where their catcher is. But, it is what it is right now. And we as a fan base have to deal with it. And obviously the Cardinals had the idea that Nootbaar was going to be a more productive player for them than Sean Murphy. And oh, by the way, the Braves gave up William Contreras in that deal. He might be
That's
the best
true.
catcher of all of them.
That's actually a really good point. We're also getting a chat here, and please, guys, jump into the chat. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe here to STL Sports Central. Hit the bell button. That way you're going to know whenever we go live. Like this morning when we had the link up a little bit earlier for some technical reasons, but we didn't go live until, like we always do, at 10 a.m. And if you had the bell button, you would have known exactly
Ding.
when we went live, because it would have been ding, just like that. One of the questions here, Let's Turn 2, says, problem is the two main players we were curious about with Runway, Gorman and Walker. I don't know what's there anymore on July 14th as I did April 1st. I think you're right there with Walker, but I'll just have to disagree, because I'm a little bit more confident in what Nolan Gorman is than I was to start the season, because he's made tangible changes to his approach at the plate, and we've seen him have more success this season than last season. And over the last, since mid-June, over the last about 20 games for Nolan Gorman, he has an 800 OPS with 5 home runs, 241 average, slugging 500. That's kind of exactly what I expect to see from Nolan Gorman. I don't, if you want more than that from Nolan Gorman, your expectations might be the issue, I think.
Well, and I think the Cardinals, they didn't really give him a chance to play.
Exactly. That's why I highlighted the last month.
Yeah. So you look at the last month, and I think the thing that we have to think about as fans is we have to make that comp. And there was always that concern with the Cardinals that he would turn into Kyle Schwarber. By the way, he's got a career low 30.1 strikeout rate. Still not what you'd like to have. You'd like to have a lower strikeout rate and a higher walk rate. His walk rate is 11.9, but that's also a career high. And the power is there, as we saw again over the weekend. If he gets his bat on a ball, it really flies. But the Cardinals' concern and my concern was always that he would wind up being a guy who becomes Schwarber. Schwarber this year, strikeout rate 26.3, walk rate 15.5. He walks a ton, but Gorman isn't far off of that. And I really do think that if he, and in the third year for Kyle Schwarber, 30.9, almost identical strikeout rate, 12.1, almost identical walk rate. So if he progresses at the age of 25, like he's capable of, and I think he's going to. I think it
says, I'm convinced Gorman is a very streaky player, that has its moments when the game is on the line, but not one that you can depend on. Yes, he has power, but just doesn't put bat on the ball enough.
Welcome to baseball in 2025.
Thank you so much, Randy. God, I was about to trip over myself getting to that phrase. Yes, and also Bill Downton, new bar and IL. What a surprise! My question is, has that chat been burning a hole in your pocket since April? You just couldn't. You just almost fumbled it. Getting the gun out of the holster. Oh, he's finally injured.
Bill Downton. I'm not sure if we should see Walker the rest of the year. Walker's going to come back and he's going to get the exact same leeway that he had before he got hurt. They don't want a player to lose an opportunity because of injury. And so when Walker comes back after the All-Star break, you will see him as much as you saw him before he got injured. That's just the way it's going to be. And oh, by the way, you'll also see, and this is one of the things with Gorman, and I really am interested to see how aggressive the Cardinals are in trying to move Nolan Arenado, because they still want to play Gorman and they obviously want to see Walker get opportunities too. And the only way to really do that, and Herrera's got to play, and he's going to be the DH. So the only real way to do that is to have a different, to not have Nolan Arenado playing third base. But at the same time, Arenado's one of the veterans that has been through a September pennant race. And that was another thing that Marmol talked about over the weekend, is the biggest evaluation that the Cardinals are going to get is going to be in September, when the game changes, when the focus is higher, when the intensity level is higher, when every play matters. They really relish the idea of seeing not only Walker and Gorman, but Newbar, Scott, Burleson, Pajes. How do these guys react when the sport changes? And it is going to be, as it always is in September, a completely different sport. We got the Newt Bar on the IL. What a surprise. Yeah, he's got the little intercostal injury.
Just couldn't wait for it, could you?
Yeah. No.
Good Lord. Cole Bassett's left foot. The Cardinals are 5 games over 500, +5
There you
So
go.
we're doing
Thank
plus
you.
5 today. With Fetty's struggles, imagine where they'd be if McGreevy had taken the mound in June, development delay, or ego blockade. And let's dive into the facts of what happened here, because we were doing a lot of predictions, and I'm not going to say we all have egg on our face, because I think we were all operating from the most logical point of view in our criticisms around Fetty and things like that. I'm not saying that him having a not blow up, I don't even know if you can call, 4 2/3 with 3 earned runs. Solid seems a little bit too.
It's who he is.
It's passable. Passable is a word.
Yeah.
Passable. It's a passable performance from Eric Fetty. But to Bill Downton's point on this one, Michael McGreevy did get absolutely rocked again. He pitched on July 12th down in Memphis. 5 innings pitched. He got tagged for 6 earned runs, a lot of home run, hit a batter, walked another one, had just 3 strikeouts. So that's 2 back-to-back really rough starts for Michael McGreevy. But is it fair to wonder if there's a mentality with a guy who's I was just up at the majors, I should be up there, and now I'm not?
They've literally told him, you've done everything you can do in the minors. There's nothing else for him to prove at the minor league level. So I can understand how there would be a lack of focus on his part. And sure, would you like to see him dominate every single start? Yes, you would. But do you know? I know. Matthew knows he can pitch at the major league level. There's no question about that. So I'm not going to even concern myself with these 2 starts. It's kind of like a guy in spring training, a veteran in spring training who's just working on stuff.
Yeah. And a big factor yesterday that King's Echo brings up, Herrera staying healthy and hitting consistently with stolen bases is a huge key to success for the first half of the season. Now, I think Herrera getting multiple stolen bases in the game, probably an anomalous event. I did like seeing it, but Ivan Herrera's return to the lineup was a good thing to see yesterday.
He is their best hitter, not just their best right-handed hitter. He's their best hitter, and he'll make a difference. Yeah, the stolen bases is amazing. He is not going to catch anymore because that stresses the hamstrings, but he'll be in the lineup pretty much every day. Ellipsis 150. Are the Cardinals going to ruin McGreevy the way they ruined Zach Thompson? They've been pretty strident about keeping McGreevy in the starting rotation and not bouncing him back and forth and playing mind games with him. I think they did that with Zach Thompson. I think we're past that now. They told Zach Thompson, prepare as this was in 2024, prepare as a starter. By the end of spring training, you're a number 1 lefty reliever. You're going to be here by the first month of the season. No, you aren't going to be our number 1 lefty reliever anymore. You're going to go back down to the minors and stretch out to be a starter in 2025. They screwed him over, and then he got hurt. So I don't think, though, that the situations are similar simply because they haven't put McGreevy in the bullpen, and they haven't made him promises that they didn't keep, like Zach Thompson. They told McGreevy right at the beginning of the season, look, unfortunately, you are an emergency call-up. You're good enough to be here, but you are an emergency call-up. And he understood that. He's a pro. Now, he might be getting tired of it down in Memphis, but they were honest with him. He bought in. Matt's bought in. And he understood when he looked, okay, I got all these veterans here, guys that are making money. Liberatore outpitched me in spring training. Palante was their best starter last year. He got all of that. But I think now, as he sees Fetty's struggles more than anybody else, yeah, he's probably thinking, yeah, I should be there. And I don't blame him at all.
Not at all. Lipsis 150 does ask, are the Cardinals going to ruin McGreevy the way they ruined Zach Thompson?
Yeah, no.
2 things. I think part of my theory is with Zach Thompson has always been it was the push and pull, not just of majors, minors, but roll that also mess with Zach Thompson. But I also need to give credit to people who are down at the ballpark every day when I'm not. In that when I brought up that theory to Jim Hayes, he scoffed pretty loudly at me about them ruining Zach Thompson. So Jim doesn't necessarily buy into that, and he's there every day. And so I do have to give some credence to somebody who knows more than I do, who does not agree with me very much on that statement.
The thing was, a couple of years ago, Thompson had a great stretch run, as a matter of fact. Remember when he looked at Clayton Kershaw video and started to pattern not only his pitches, but his pitch selection after Kershaw, and he had a ton of success, and then he's never been able to replicate that. And hopefully, I don't know if he's capable of coming back down the stretch, but hopefully next year he'll be able to come to camp and show something for the Cardinals, because there's, especially with the left-handed situation in the bullpen, John King just isn't that good. Nats will be gone. There'll probably be a lefty spot available in the bullpen next season.
Yep, rip it up Cards. I love Newt, and I'm thrilled about the first half success. But moving forward, they need to focus on 2026. I'd be excited to see some bold moves like DFAing Fetty and Miles to bring up McGreevy and Matthews. Also, I believe trading Newt is a good idea to keep Burley and Walker in the outfield. Let's move to JC, Maton, and Helsley too. That's a lot of changes, but could easily revitalize the team. My Lord Almighty, rip it up Cards. You're selling everything.
Yeah, and number one, the Cardinals would like to know more about Graceffo before they would move Helsley. I think I would be inclined to actually ask Helsley if he wants to sign here before I would move on from him. They'll DFA or trade one. They aren't getting rid of Maton because they think they have a chance to be in the playoffs. They aren't getting rid of JC because they think he has a chance to be utility infielder. I don't disagree with the idea of trading Newt. He might have really good market value, and I don't. And Bernie wrote that and talked about it last week. I don't think that that's a bad idea because of all the left-handed hitting you have, not only here, but in the minors on the way too. Weatherholt is a left-handed hitter. Davis is a left-handed hitter. Church is a left-handed hitter. In addition to Burleson, Gorman, and Donovan. So trading Newt would not break my heart. But I think that this team, in terms of its starting 8, I think the starting 8 are here. I just don't think they know who they are yet.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I like. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes. Maybe one player from the minors continues to rake and changes things up.
And by the way, one other note, rip it up Cards. This whole season has been built towards 2026. Everything that they've done, aside from having Arenado on the team, and they tried to trade him, he turned it down. But the presence of Pages playing every day, Wynn playing every day, Donovan getting his opportunity, all of the outfielders, that wasn't geared towards 2025. All of that was geared toward 2026.
That's insane. And I agree. And I think it should be. And that's what I've always pushed. And I'm with Colbass's left foot on this one too. Cards are quietly winning the reset narrative. Despite front office drama and roster churn, St. Louis has battled into contention. If this really is a runway season, then maybe the turbulence is worth it. Well, I think that last line is important.
Yeah. And think about where the Cardinals are. And by the way, Cardinals CFO, I still have not received my check. Okay.
Yeah. What the heck?
So send it right here to STL Sports Central. But to that point, if you compare the Cardinal rebuild, whatever you want to call it, to the Pirates having a 30-year one, to the Royals having a 30-year one. You know, the Rangers, before they got good over the last couple of years, they had like a 20 or 25-year reset.
We talked to Jesse Rogers a few months ago about the White Sox being mired in like a 15-year long one at this point almost.
Right. Yeah. Some of these teams, the Marlins, they've had, I think, 4 winning seasons in their history. They won the World Series in 2 of them. But these teams are mired in rebuilds for decades. And the Cardinals didn't even touch the bottom of the ocean. They went down to 71 wins, and now they're bouncing back. There are teams that win 56, 60 games, and that's it for years in a row. Baltimore was in that same situation. Now, are the Cardinals going to win a World Series this year? No, but I think relative to what other baseball fandoms have had to endure, I think that we've got it pretty good here.
Smooth Productions. Herrera has proved that he's the team MVP. He's truly their most valuable player based off of his production and the effect he's had on the team when he's not in the lineup.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Who else would you put on that list? Donovan, I think, is their best player, but I don't think he's been their most valuable this year. Wynn could be put into that mix because if you don't have Mason Wynn, then where are you? But yeah, I'll put Herrera in there.
I'm going to argue that you could still definitely make a case for Wilson Contreras because he's still giving you offensive production while also providing you defense at first base that hasn't dropped off from a Gold Glove level that Paul Goldschmidt was giving you. And Herrera is the answer, but the fact that Contreras is hitting the way he is in the middle of the lineup and actually plays a position and is playing it really well, I think that's why I give Wilson a little bit of a boost right up behind Herrera.
Yeah.
Because he is still playing a position.
I do like this from Keith Adams. Do you guys believe Mo doesn't understand that
so
people
much
have
for
realized he's throwing Ollie under the bus and it's clear now? Go if you hop on the old Twitter machine, check out Josh Jacobs. It's Josh Jaco 98.
Thank you for pointing this out.
And this is on the Gas House Gang podcast on KMOX with Bernie and Kevin Wheeler and Chris Ranji. And Ollie does a pretty good job of doing the same thing.
Wow, you said Chris Ranji and then put your phone down pretty silently.
Yeah.
You guys don't.
Okay, so these guys got mad at me for throwing a phone at Ranji.
One time Randy threw his phone at Ranji when they were in studio together.
You throw a phone at a guy one time and people never forget it.
But anyhow,
it didn't hit him either.
Yes, you pointing out Josh Jacobs' video, and
not the running back from the Packers, by the
way. And we talked about with Bernie on Friday. Go back and watch our interview with Bernie on Friday. He talked about it as well, about how the Fetty decision really seemed like it was an ego decision for Mozeliak. The way I phrased it was Mozeliak's really trying to close the loop on the Fetty deal where he gave up Edmund and everything that's happened since then. He's trying to get something for him. And so it's showing a little ego. To your point, and to the point of Jacob's video, more than just the obvious facts, is the look on Marmol's face when he's being asked some of these questions from Ranji, Wheels, and Bernie. And I think at this point they have to be aware that people are picking up on this, because it's also not the first time. Ollie, this is probably the third or fourth instance where we've seen Ollie, whether at the podium in postgame or in interviews, kind of throw some messaging across the bow to the front office. And I love it when he does it, and I appreciate every time he does it. And I can't blame him, because clearly, with what Bernie talked about on Friday and the way you can see him in that Gas House Gang interview from last Tuesday, he doesn't like the decisions that are being made that are out of his hands.
And it's brilliant on Ollie's part, because he knows several things. Number one, this is a front office that craves stability. He has a contract through next year that was advocated for by John Mozeliak. Mo is not going to be here. Mo is not going to fire Ollie Marmol with his team in a playoff hunt, and with Ollie under contract for next year, when Mo is not going to be here. If anybody's going to make that decision, it's going to be Chaim Bloom. And Ollie knows all of this. So Ollie can profess philosophical differences, and he's not going to get whacked for it. So I think it's a really smart move on the part of Ollie Marmol. He is explaining the moves or the lack of moves to the media and the fan base. And we all know what's going on now. And he's eventually he says, why not? What the hell? If I can say pretty much what I want now, because I know they aren't going to fire me. And so he's able to say what he wants. It's not unlike what TLR did when, remember when Tony's going to join us in a few moments, but the whole Colby Rasmus thing, when he had Mo essentially rebuild the bullpen in 2011, he was able to take a shot at a player. Now, he had Joe Strauss, which made a big difference, because the late, great Joe Strauss would get it in the paper right away. And then all of a sudden the Cardinals had to react. And how did they react? They traded Rasmus and got a bunch of relievers. There just isn't that oomph of a Joe Strauss in 2025.
Can I also say this?
And by the way, the oomph, let me add this, of what the Post-Dispatch was then.
The idea, because the people hear the way I'm phrasing it and they think it's all this like punitive, I'm saying ego in this really negative way. I also think there's plenty of room for, because how we're envisioning this is like Marmol and Mo are button heads, but don't like leave out the possibility that Mo's okay with Ollie doing this, because Mo also understands. Now, they might not be good at messaging with the Cardinals, but I think they understand it and how it works to a point where I think Mo is okay with being the bad guy when he has to make what he feels is a strictly logical decision for the bottom line for the Cardinals. And that's why he uses words like arbitrage or net, is because I legitimately believe that he thinks the best thing for the Cardinals is to get something from the Eric Fetty deal.
Yeah. I agree.
And so, and he said, and he's fine with him taking the public shrift and Ollie publicly making a statement that says, well, actually for the baseball between the white lines reasons, I think Ollie would like it if it wasn't Fetty. And I think Mo's okay with Ollie being able to make kind of the everyman statement from the coaching perspective, and everyone being mad about the logical GM perspective he has to make, because that's been his job the entire time. And I think he's also aware of the fact that the manager having a little bit of a messaging thing with the fans is a good thing for the team. And whereas the fans being mad at the powers that be, that's kind of always going to be the case and doesn't hurt anything. So right. I think I'm not saying that's the case, but I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that this is completely a known commodity within the room and it's not actually a problem.
Yeah, let's get to Thomas Tigrett's chat. What wild that the Cardinals spend $87.5 million on Contreras, have one of the best hitting young catchers in baseball, along with 2 other catchers on the roster, and it still feels like a hole on the team. I don't feel like the catching situation feels like a hole. You aren't going to have, if you're the Cardinals, an all-star at every position. And the Cardinals have determined, and we saw it over the course of 20 years with the Yadier Molina, that it's more important to get great defense and great game management from that position than great offense. The offense that Pedro Pages delivers is not Mike Piazza, but it's passable for this team because you get offense from other areas. Catching offense is secondary to me. To me, the key for a good catcher is to play great defense and manage the game and get the most out of the starting pitchers and all the pitchers. And I think Pedro Pages does that. I don't see catcher as being a hole on the team. As a matter of fact, I do look at it as a strength with Bernal passing Jimmy Crooks on the Cardinals Major League Pipeline top 30. Crooks still there. Ramirez and then Pages, obviously, and Wilson's not catching anymore. I don't think it's a hole. Hey, I want you to know about DraftKings Pick 6. I'm so happy to have partnered with DraftKings and Pick 6, and it's really a fun way to play. Now, there's not much going on tonight. You've got the Home Run Derby and you've got the WNBA, but you can play. Right now, all new customers who play DraftKings Pick 6 will get $50 in bonus picks. That's $10 extra when you keep the action going all week long. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use that promo code right there, STL Sports. And here's what I got going on tonight, Matthew. I've got Angel Reese against Minnesota. I've got Angel Reese to go with more than 12.5 rebounds. What do you think?
It truly is All-Star break week, isn't it?
Angel Reese more than 12.5 rebounds.
I mean, that's the smart play.
Yep. And then
is there a field goal percentage one on there?
Not quite.
Okay.
No. Then the other one I've got is in the Home Run Derby tonight. I have O'Neal Cruz to go over 472.5 feet with his longest home run.
I like that. I love that DraftKings puts that on there. That's insane.
Yeah. So that's tonight at 6. So
wait, so which game was that again?
I've got the Lynx against the Sky.
Okay.
And I've got Reese to go over 12.5 rebounds.
Okay.
And then I've got O'Neal Cruz to go over 472.5 feet with his longest home run. On DraftKings Pick 6, use the app today and use that promo code right there, STL Sports, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, the Cardinals Hall of Fame former skipper Tony La Russa is going to join us in just a few minutes, and we're looking forward to him. Mike Claiborne has made his way into the studios here at STL Sports Central after talking for like 9 hours yesterday, and he didn't stop, by the way. He had game, rain delay, game, rain delay, game. It never ended for Mike Claiborne, but it is good. Yell, how you doing, man? he can't talk. So,
oh jeez, it was a crazy day yesterday to the point where they were able to actually talk about the Cardinals draft picks on the broadcast because of how long the rain delay went, and we got a lot of chats here throughout the show about the Cardinals draft pick, the big one, Cole Bass's left foot with Liam Doyle. The Cardinals just drafted their future ace or their next elite closer. Obviously, the highest rated fastball in the draft, the lefty out of Tennessee. He's got a lot of personality, and he's got a lot
Hey, we had a mishap there. Mishaps are never good. We had a mishap. But we're back. It's great to have you with us. We were just talking about Liam Doyle, Cardinals' first-round draft choice, who was absolutely dominant at Tennessee this year. Kind of a surprise that he was there with Eli Willits going first, and then a player that wasn't seen in any mock drafts going second to the Angels, and then everything kind of worked out for the Cardinals to get Doyle. I don't think the Cardinals expected that Doyle was going to be there, but as was said by Cole Bassett's left foot, this is a guy that has a chance at some point to be a big-time starter. He has that sort of ability.
And this is why we kept talking about the three lefties, because it's not just that they all had pretty impressive, pitching numbers, but it was also that they had a small arc to where Cade Anderson, Doyle, and even Jamie Arnold out of Florida State were all guys that people were talking about could be bullpen arms. More Cade and Liam this year, potentially, if you needed it, but Jamie Arnold could be coming through all the way already next year. So it was just the quickness with which these pitchers were coming through. But honestly, I really do think that had things gone the way people expected and had Eli Willits been available at 5, I really do think they were going to go with the big bat. But everything falls the way it falls. Holiday's not there. Willits not there. And obviously they pulled the trigger on the best pitcher available.
And it was interesting because the Nationals said that they thought that Willits was the best hitter and the best fielder in this draft. He's probably not going to wind up being a power hitter. He'll probably be something like Mason Wynn if that maxes out for him. But we'll see. If you can handle.
We have a little issue with is the skipper having an issue getting on the show? So Tony La Russa's scheduled to join us here at 10:30. But hey, it's a little bit different thing. We're doing a digital show. It's not radio, so the call-in process is just slightly different. Things are a little bit different for Tony La Russa getting on a show like this than it has been in the past. I like Jay Call's comment here. Grounds crews were the real MVPs of the game. Yes, the fact that they were able to get things going and somehow MLB baseball, Major League Baseball had told them that they were going to restart the game at 3:05, despite the fact that there were like 7 or 8 puddles still actively out in the outfield. So they got the game going. 30 minutes later, they had to call it again. They go to the delay for 3 hours, and they come back to finish the game because they had to get one more baseball game in last night for Major League Baseball. Apparently, I'm not sure why, but that was the case, and it threw off what was shaping up to be a really good Sonny Gray start. He was mowing him down, had 5 Ks through just those 3 innings he worked. But anytime you got Sonny Gray and you mess with his schedule, you don't know what you're going to get. And really, I've been impressed with Sonny Gray because I think this is the 3rd start of his that has been affected by rain. The amount of hours that he's had to completely take off and work through in the bullpen and things like that, it's been absolutely insane. And we know he's a guy who doesn't like his schedule screwed with, and yet he's made multiple starts through rain. And one day when one of his schedules got pushed back a day, he came out and had arguably maybe his greatest start of his entire career. And so the Sonny Gray thing, and that's why I put it up on the side there. Can we just play with Sonny when it's actually sunny? Because I don't want it to be too hot, because then he's got to burn through 6 or 7 jerseys. But I'd like it if Sonny Gray wouldn't have to jump through 9 hoops to get through half of his starts in the first half of the season, because the rain just will not stop, Randy.
It's unbelievable. I don't know that we've ever had a year like this. The climate change is remarkable. And and it has to drive the players crazy because they like to be into a groove. They like to be into a rhythm, and they
like to be on planes. I'm sure, like 9 p.m. last night instead of being at the ballpark.
Yeah. So we are having some technical difficulties getting Tony La Russa on the air, but hopefully we'll be able to do that momentarily.
All righty.
I did want to talk a little bit more about Liam Doyle because, man, the numbers are mind-blowing. And when you're pitching in the SEC, it's not an easy conference to pitch in. So I'm really impressed by what the Cardinals were able to do in getting Doyle. And I would wonder if he'll be on the fast track. I would think that he'll wind up being on the fast track to the major leagues once he gets signed by the Cardinals, once he's rocking and rolling. Don't you think that we'll see him within the next couple of years?
Yeah, you'd think that's obviously what I was talking about. Either the big highlight on all the lefties is their path to the majors. The righties were a little bit younger. Seth Hernandez, the top-rated righty, is a high school pitcher, so they're going to have much longer arcs. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we see Doyle start in Double-A. I think that was the projection of like how far you can push this guy. You can start him in Double-A right out of the gate. And so Double-A for the rest of this year, Triple-A for next year, and then maybe you're looking at September already. And that's that's big for me because I think, to your point earlier, they never had to drop to the bottom in the reset. And so getting a guy in the draft, which is so rare that you can actually ever get a guy who can impact you in 2 or 3 years. And now in back-to-back seasons, when they rarely get those top 10 picks, to have both of them potentially be able to impact a team within a 2 or 3 year span, that's an absolute home run from the talent evaluation and draft side of things.
Yeah, and to get a hard-throwing left-hander, there have been a few hard-throwing left-handers out there, and yes, there are more than there used to be because we have such max effort. But to get a guy that's still throwing hard in the fifth, sixth inning, and he gets it up there, he's 95, 96, up to 101 miles an hour. It's really impressive what Doyle's able to bring.
I think I saw he had 6 102-mile-per-hour pitches in this season for Tennessee. On the other side, they also did pick a Tennessee player with their third pick, a right-handed pitcher. I'm really like worried about what happens when Brooke comes back and we have to start talking about all these Tennessee players. Because she's not going to like. We have to start rooting for a Tennessee guy. She's going to be so happy. She's going to rub it in my face every time I talk about how excited I am for Liam Doyle.
She's a Vandy girl. She'll probably be rooting for that too.
She'll but they're not killing in baseball like they used to. She's got to make that natural shift.
Yeah, Tanner Franklin is the right-hander.
Yep.
6'5", 225-pounder who Randy Flores said last night, if he would have pitched for a different school, he probably would have been right there in terms of where he slotted in the draft. Another player the Cardinals drafted last night, this is one to keep an eye on, an outfielder by the name of Ryan Mitchell. He was a high school player out of Houston, and they love his aggressiveness, his speed. They think that he can be a great five-tool player.
Yeah, and I like that. And listen, that what we talked about and why I thought Willits was going to be the pick, because bats after the first round, and this is from Randy Flores, it gets a little bit more malleable. You don't really know what you're dealing with. So it's obviously always going to be a crap shot with the later bats, but everything you read about the guy seems like a pretty good crap shot. It's all about getting as many darts as possible and with a chance to hit the bullseye. And with Weatherholt working out and with everything we think about Doyle, with some of these other young players coming up right now, from my perspective, I don't know how, if you're a St. Louis fan, you're not pretty happy with what's coming up in the youth prospect. I know some people are mad that there's not a lot of right-handed either hitters or pitchers apparently coming up, but that is the last thing to be worried about when you're talking about prospects.
Yeah. I'm trying to get text to Tony, and for whatever reason, my texts to TLR aren't working. So
maybe his phone's having an issue apparently. Oh, because he's not getting texts from you. Can't get into the StreamYard with us. Apparently Tony Larussa's phone not working too great.
Oh, he's on his way. Okay.
Okay. So maybe we'll record with him after the fact and play it tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I honestly, for a guy like Tony Russa, who obviously the coaching side of things is so important, but for me, the player evaluation and how he viewed young players is fascinating. As we're talking about Nolan Gorman, that was something that popped into my head. I was like, man, I wonder what Tony La Russa, when he was managing a 25-year-old who's showing tangible changes, like I'm making the change, I'm pulling back the bat, I'm lowering my strikeout rate, I'm raising how I'm seeing the ball. I'd be fascinated to know. If we get him on, I will ask him this: how TLR would handle a young player like that. Again, because the numbers are abominable for a guy from TLR's era. You'd look at that average and say, "What is this kid doing?" You look at those strikeouts and say, "Oh my God!" But relative to this era, I wonder how he would handle a player like Nolan Gorman going forward, because he's showing improvements. Well, he's not just going up there and swinging wildly and trying things.
But Tony did not have to deal with many young players.
You're right. But was that the case also in Oakland, in Chicago?
No, he developed young players, especially in Oakland.
That's what I'm saying.
McGuire, Weiss, Canseco, Terry Steinbach, that whole group. Well, not that whole group because he got Dave Henderson, but he brought up Ricky Henderson. They had a lot of young players on that team.
And he had, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but he had more of he had some decision making heft when the White Sox brought him in too, right?
Yes.
And so that's my point is he's a guy who has so much experience on the field, but he also has this 10,000-foot view of being the executive side of things and having to build a roster and make some of these quick cut decisions that I think it'd be, and again, but he's, to your point, he's a guy who wasn't really known in St. Louis as a guy who had to ever play the youth or really would coach up the youth. And so I wonder that dichotomy of 10,000-foot view as the executive versus coach on the field, how you handle a guy who, again, the big thing with Gorman for me is that he's making changes that are finding success. I think it's a tougher question with a guy like Jordan Walker who keeps trying to change things. And I don't know if have we seen a consistent, month from Jordan Walker in the last year? We
have not. And that's the thing is with a guy like Walker, and think about a guy like Tony. Tony wants to win every single day.
Yeah.
And it's different. So it's just, it's just not the same with a guy like TLR. So I'm trying to get you to be able to send this link. We're trying like heck to get Tony on there.
We want to talk to TLR.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll try.
Okay, good. We're gonna work on that. But to the point here, a player that has a rough half season like that, Tony's going to play the guys that give him the opportunity to win every single day. Albert Pujols didn't deal with that sort of adversity. So I just think that this is a different time. This is different than anything we have ever seen as Cardinal fans. You got it?
Yeah, I'll try it again.
Okay. Hold on.
Colbass's left foot does say, remember, Tony La Russa brought up Albert Pujols. Was his hand a little bit forced in that one by roster build and depth?
And not only that, but everybody knew how great Albert was, and Albert never had that Jordan Walker thing. When their young players came up and struggled, they didn't stay around long. But Albert never struggled. I mean, he had 337 in his rookie year. So
kind of changes the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. He didn't have to deal with the kind of adversity that Walker's dealing with. But if you think about a hot prospect that comes up like Colby Rasmus, didn't get a ton of time. A guy like J.D. Drew, he struggled a little bit, didn't get a ton of time. When young players came up and didn't perform immediately, this is why the Cardinals went out and got people like Reggie Sanders and Encarnacion and traded for Edmonds and went out and got Larry Walker and traded for Roland, even though you had Polanco playing at a very high level. Always had a veteran shortstop. Adam Kennedy didn't get much of an opportunity with the Cardinals before they moved on from him in the Edmonds trade. Yadi was a superb defensive catcher when he came up, and the two guys that got that opportunity were Yadier Molina and Albert Pujols. Otherwise, there were not many young position players that got that opportunity. And even really, when you go back to Morris and Alan Bennis, there weren't a ton of young pitchers that stuck around either. There were players that got brief opportunities, but not lengthy opportunities.
Mizzou 1755 says Doyle's fire reminds me of Chris Carpenter. St. Louis could use that. And that's the other thing. It's not just the fire that he brings from a pitching perspective. A lot of St. Louis fans were reacting to him because he's had a lot of incidents where he gets very fired up. He yells, he screams, he's intense, and he's got an attitude. He's got some personality. I think there's definitely some people who have missed that side of things from Cardinals players over the last few years. And that was another aspect of Doyle that I think gets people really excited. To that point, I also think we need to realize that when Brooke does come back, I think we already know the guest for the show. John Denton's going to have to join us.
Yep.
And we're just going to have to let these Tennessee people go absolutely nuts. Just tell us how great they are, how great he looks in orange, and all those things.
Yeah. Bud Smith, another example, throws a no-hitter in 01, traded in 02. Bill Downton, how was that?
Can I ask, what was the... Because this is beyond. I'm 12 years old. I'm not dialed into the Cardinals to that level. What was the reaction for trading a young pitcher who did have a no hitter on his?
Because it was Scott Rowland. Rowland was the hottest commodity, and because it was Scott Rowland, everybody was thrilled. Polanco was having a good year, and Polanco had a great career, but because the Cardinals got Rowland out of that deal for Polanco and Smith, everybody was thrilled. Not people weren't mad. Bud Smith was a prospect, but the Cardinals were in win now mode, and they went out and they got Chuck Finley right at the same time that year too, in 02. So there was a lot going on with Darryl Kyle passing away, but I don't think people were shattered by the fact that they lost Bud Smith in that deal.
That makes sense. It just appears that we're having a little just discrepancy here because we were sending the link and he just nothing's happened with on the link, and that's. Oh, actually, it looks like something might have happened here. So we have Tony on, and let's see if we can hear Tony. Let's see if Tony can hear us actually too.
Tony Russa, it's Randy Karraker, and I think we've made connection now. How you doing, Tony?
Good. I'm not very technical, so I can follow it up with the best of them.
We did this, though. I appreciate it, and we had the difficulty. Thanks so much for coming on with us. And Tony, thanks so much for what you still do for the St. Louis community with what you got coming up on Wednesday night over at Stiefel with your Celebrate Cardinals Championship. A great evening with a lot of people.
It's an interesting background to it. I'll tell you too quickly. It actually happened during opening day. We get there the day before, the bunch of us. And so we were at the restaurant and we sat around talking for a long time. And then the next day's the game, we went back for about 2 different days. We started reminiscing about our memories. And especially we talked about Darryl Kyle and then Walt Jocketty. And then that kind of said, look, we want those memories to exist for the fans. So this is more about the fans. It's a bunch of guys getting together. We're going to have video and we're going to recapture some wonderful championship moments. But guys are going to talk. They're going to talk about how Edmonds made the catch in Game 7 against the Astros or whatever it is. David Freese. We got a great group of people, but it really comes down to the history of championships. It starts out actually with Jack Buck being honored and Ozzie being there when Jack makes the call about the Wizard. And it's really for the fans. That's why I'm anxious. I appreciate this chance because I want the fans to know we're doing this so that you guys can enjoy it because we're enjoying talking about it.
Hey, Tony, I want to go back. You mentioned Walt there. And like you, I loved the late, great Walt Jocketty. I remember one time in 97, I was doing the post-game show downstairs at the old ballpark. And I said, it was just my opinion from reading the tea leaves. I said on the air, hey, if you're getting your hopes up about getting Mark McGwire, you might just want to cool your jets a little bit because he's probably not coming here. And I get to a break, and you remember the window down by our studio, and standing outside is Walt. And I said, what's up? And he said, hey, I just want you to know, don't give up on this Big Mac thing. There's still something there that might happen. Obviously, you were intimately involved with all of that. Were you always confident that you were going to get McGwire, or did you think there was a chance at any time that he would go to the Angels or somewhere else?
No, I was probably as skeptical as you were because, I talked to Mark, and he knew that the next year, in '98, it would have been 98, that he would be with the Angels. So because of his friendship with Walt, and myself, he didn't want to think, hey, look, we're going to go over there. You're going to give up some prospects, and it's just going to be a short 2-month thing. And this is part of Walt. Walt was a very unusual guy because he's such a good person, and his ego's in his pocket, but he was very intuitive. And he literally said to me, he says, if we get Mark here, because Mark is a very sensitive, kind of shy guy, very compassionate. He's probably one of the finest teammates. You can ask anybody how much they enjoyed him. He's very personal. He said, if we get Mark here and he gets around the situation with the Cardinal fans and how they love and appreciate the game and their players, and if you remember, he makes the trade. Mark starts on the road like 1 for 24 or something. Mm-hmm. His first game back, and he thought he was going to get booed. They gave him a standing ovation for about 5 minutes. And Walt was right. Once, about the middle of September, he was so infatuated with the Cardinal tradition and the fans that he told his agent, I want to be back here and make a deal.
Tony, say hi to my co-host here, Matthew Rocchio. Matthew.
Hi, Matthew.
Thank you so much for coming on, Tony. I grew up in St. Louis, and I born in 1991, so I saw a lot of great Cardinals baseball because of you, and so I want to thank you personally very much for all your time as the manager of the Cardinals. A couple World Series were very fun to celebrate, so I appreciate that. But speaking of some of those Cardinals memories, obviously 2011 special for a lot of people. You talk about the importance of having guys in the locker room, who compassionate leadership and things like that. Something that's always jumped out to me about 2011 is you had a lot of veterans, but the impact of guys like Carlos Beltran and Lance Berkman, and obviously Berkman's, I think, hit in Game 6 never gets talked about enough, right alongside David Freese. But just how important was, I know you had, again, a lot of great veterans on that team already, and Albert and Halliday and things like that. But how important was adding 2 more veteran presence like Carlos Beltran and Lance Berkman to the locker room then?
Well, actually, Beltran came the next year after I left, but
Next year, yeah,
but
my bad.
Berkman did. But it's a good point here again to compliment Walt, because Walt's belief was that you needed a mix. You needed the excitement of the young guys. So we had like Jay and Descalzo, young guys who were trying to prove that they were big leaguers, and you mix them in with quality veterans. So you'd have the enthusiasm and the mentorship combination going. And I think the most important point to make here and for fans to understand, as professional baseball and professional sports has gotten more distracting from agents and whatever it is, it's more and more important that clubhouse be united. And the way you united it is with guys that are willing to be, good leaders, and they require a certain culture, and the way we did it. And you can right now, if you call John Jay and Dan Descalzo, they'll tell you they came in there young, and it wasn't long before they realized, hey, this is how we operate here, and now they're the leaders in that clubhouse today.
Hey, Tony, Albert still talks about a conversation that you and he had early in his career where you told him the most important things are driving in runs and scoring runs. And I think the fact that he was willing to swing the bat and drive in a run rather than go up with the idea of taking a walk, not that there's anything wrong with a walk, but I think so many hitters, especially in the last 15 or so years, they go up with the idea of taking a walk. Do you agree with me that part of what made Albert great was the fact that he was willing to be aggressive to drive in a run?
One step behind that, Randy, is that part of what made him great was he's a real conscientious, determined to do the right thing kind of player his whole career. And so if you talk sense to him, he embraced it. And I'll give you a McGuire thing. That one year that in 2001, when he was a rookie, McGuire got hurt, and he came to me, and he was in 300 his rookie year. And he said, oh, big man's gone. I got to hit for more power. And I says, Albert, that's not how we play it. We play hard contact all over the field. The higher your average, the more rallies you start. And if you've got the power, it'll be there. You'll, in fact, hit more home runs. So he was willing to change his style because he thought he needed to hit more. Well, he ends up hitting 37, driving 130. So it's obvious, and this is the biggest mistake I think going today. There's such an emphasis all over about, you got to swing hard 3 times and see if you can hit an extra base hit, especially a home run. You don't do those things against good pitchers. It's more about making contact all over the field and creating rallies and making them turn into crooked numbers. So that was true then. It's more true. It's actually easier to win now if you just play the game correctly.
Is there a middle ground? Because obviously, when it came to the pitching side of things, you embraced a more, a different style than what was traditional, especially in 2011, and things have gotten obviously kind of very different over the last 14 years down the road. But is there a middle ground between that old school mentality and the new numbers that are being introduced? Is there a middle ground, and where do you think it is?
Well, that's the question of the day right now. What is the blend between information and numbers and the actual playing of the game? And I've got some strong opinion. First of all, we specialized in preparation. We were always hunting information and trying to be better prepared. But a lot of those percentages, they work getting you ready to play. But once you play the game, it's so volatile. There's so much that happens on a day-to-day basis that you have to adjust to what you see. And what you find now is that the percentages in some organizations, they like 2/3 of the competition's about that, and they leave 1/3 of judgment, where it should be 1/3 preparation. And once the game starts, you really got to play with what you see. And what you see nowadays is if you strike out and not put the ball in play, you're not going to win games. You play against good pitching, you better find a way to put the ball in play and have a number of hits to make a rally. And is it traditional? No, I think it's just common sense, because there is a line that you draw with in fact, I'm not happy with it. Not that it makes any difference, but if you go to the Cardinals, the traditional, and don't and they won't get upset with me for saying this. instead of seeing batting average, you see OPS, and you see 2 or 3 numbers. They don't have RBIs and they don't have batting average. Well, that's not the way the game's supposed to be played. It's about getting guys on base. And by the way, if you want to drive in a run, you have to go in there with a hitterish kind of, I'm going to make something happen. And that's old school. Past school will be the school forever. And now, if you have a hitter that goes up there thinking, I got to hit a 2-run homer instead of a single driving a run, that's just bad baseball.
Tony, that being said, I know you like information. Is there a statistic that if you're talking to a fan, you say, that one is salient, that applies? Is there a new age statistic that you didn't use or have when you were managing that is effective now?
Probably the one that I think is the most telltale is your walks compared to strikeouts. And it sounds simple, Randy, but if you watch the games that are played, look how often you've got a guy on third base with no outs, and the first 2 guys are taking 3 swings trying to hit a 2-run homer. The guy's still standing there. The third guy makes an out. So the strikeouts are way too underappreciated. The metrics guy will say, I'd rather you strike out, but, drive the ball, extra bases. It's the same thing with pitching. This is pitching, not throwing. The emphasis on velocity and spin rate. Well, the emphasis is to throw strikes in the corners of the strike zone so you can get people out. And a lot of it has to do with, controlling your fastball and controlling your breaking ball. So, no, I feel very strongly that it's the old expression, the more complicated it gets, the more simple you better keep it.
One quick question here, Tony, and this is a specific one that the Cardinals are dealing with right now. And I'm not going to get into the actual numbers of the player, but just the Cardinals are dealing right now with a young power hitting infielder who the K numbers are bad, the walk rate's bad, and the home run numbers are showing promise. And this year, he's come back this year and he's changed his swing. The K rate's down. He's seeing more walks. What kind of, when you see that kind of actual tangible change from a player, does that give you more willingness to not necessarily focus on the numbers and give them more at bats to try to work through those things if you're seeing that tangible change at the plate?
From Nolan Gorman?
That's the change that will win games. And the more hitters that you have that have that kind of attitude, the more productive your offense will be. That's why I wish that you should have Albert someday describe his routine. And this is the routine that a guy with just line drive ability will hit. Look, I just saw David Eckstein because he's going to be there Wednesday. He had a lifetime batting average of 280. So the whole idea is, where's the ball pitch? Hit it in that direction. Hit it hard. But the bigger your swing gets, the more you try to elevate your head and your front side gets off of it, and you make less contact. A strikeout is never a good play unless you're a double play guy. So I'm encouraged that change was made. And what I would really encourage is that not only does he embrace it, but the other hitters in the lineup do the same.
The Celebrate Cardinals Championship is Wednesday night at Stiefel. You can get tickets at Ticketmaster. The event starts at 6:45. If you just go to the Stiefel website, you'll be able to get tickets. And Tony, you've got such a great group of people coming in. Joe Buck is going to be the moderator. Rick Ankiel is going to be here. David Eckstein, Jimmy Edmonds, David Freese, Al Roboski, Jason Isringhausen. One more thing, though.
Yeah.
Has a player ever made as much impact in 2 months as Will Clark made in St. Louis with the Cardinals?
I'm glad you mentioned it, because Will is going to be here with his family, and that's part of what's going to be fun for the fans. There's going to be stories told, and Will, the way he required the rookies to honor his veteran presence like Ankiel and J.D. Drew, it's beautiful. And the way he responds to pressure moments was very, very helpful to our club. So Will, in fact, I wish we'd have had more than, just like Berkman. I wish we'd have had more than 1 year with Berkman. I wish we'd have had more than 2 months with Will Clark.
Hey, do you miss managing?
Yeah, I mean, the action's down there, but I'm, when you pass your time, I feel very fortunate that somebody still wants me to hang around the game, and when you do as an advisor, you suggest or you try to persuade, but you got no thump. The thump is more fun.
Tony, appreciate your time. Appreciate what you do for St. Louis, and we will see you Wednesday night over at Stiefel.
Okay, Ray. Thanks. Both
Thank you so much, Tony.
See you.
That is the Hall of Famer, Tony La Russa, joining us here on the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central. He is just so thoughtful. He thinks the game better than anybody else.
Yeah. And I think the important thing is there, because I think a lot of people are going to snatch the issue he had with analytics and run with it. But I think that the earlier way he explained it, which is we wanted as much information as possible before the game. It's just that in his opinion, the usage of the information and the percentages have shifted in the bad side. But that's why people who always say, watch out, Whitey Herzog wouldn't have wanted these numbers. And I go, he might not have wanted all of them, but I feel like he definitely would have been like, that's pretty useful to know these things. How often my guy hits the ball to the gaps as opposed to other parts of the field. I feel like that'd be an interesting thing for him to actually know if you're a baseball manager, but it's all about the balance and it's about when you're using the information. I think that was Tony's point too.
Well, and Tony, I mean, you remember the 4-inch size binders that Dave Duncan had in front of him every night on the dugout. He had a couple of them, and those were self-developed numbers. They had all the information. The difference between Tony and guys now, Tony and Joe Torre and I talked about this on opening day. You love to have as much information as you possibly can, but if you're good, you can't and don't want to be controlled by the information. You don't want to have every move based upon numbers and thinking that players are robots, because they aren't. You have to be able to understand some players have limitations. Tony always talked about, hey, I want to be able to look in a guy's eye and see where he is at right at that moment. Some players, Albert Pujols, that heart rate didn't go up when he was in a big situation. Some players just can't perform in that sort of a situation. The best example I have of this is Mitchell Boggs. And Claibs and I have talked about this. Mitchell Boggs might have had the best setup year ever for the Cardinals. But once Jason Mott left and they tried to move Boggs into the closer role, he was an abysmal failure. He just couldn't handle a different role. And you have to be able to deal with individuals. Tony's thing was they're men, not machines. Torrey's thing was the game has a heartbeat. They're people. Whitey was always very communicative with his players, and he knew what their strengths and weaknesses were. Strengths and weaknesses don't just come from numbers, though. Strength and weaknesses come from flesh and blood, too. And you have to be able to understand that if you're going to be able to be a long-term successful manager at this level. Even Dave Roberts, who was a player, gets that part of it.
And Jake Hall says that's another similar thing. It's like when you always put in the righty-lefty matchup instead of seeing that, hey, maybe this guy is seeing the ball well today and hitting good, and he should stay in. And actually, I think that's why TLR is such a perfect example of the new age and old age mix, because in 2011 he kind of pushed the limit on going very hard on righty lefty splits, where I'm not sure how often he ignored a righty lefty split and went for this guy's seeing the ball, because it seemed like back then he maybe this is more of the defensive side from the offensive side, where he was saying, I don't care if that guy is 12 for 15. I'm putting in a lefty because he is a lefty. I don't care how good he hits right now. I'm going lefty righty because it makes the most sense, and statistically it tells me I'm going to win. But I'm sure there was the malleability of, if we do have that feeling, we're not going to make the play. And I'm sure if you dive into the 2011 postseason, there is a really good hot hitting lefty who maybe he didn't put Zepchinski in against because he didn't like that matchup. I'm sure that it probably is there. And to Jay Call's point, that's where the difference is.
And Tony did make the point, and he used to tell us all the time, and if you'll be able to go and listen to this or watch it here at STL Sports Central, but you can go to any podcast platform. We're on every podcast platform now. But he would always tell us, if you play a good game, inevitably the other team is going to find a way to lose it. And he didn't say it in exactly those terms in our interview, but he said, if you play well, now more than ever, you're going to be able to win the game because everybody else is playing poorly. And that is definitely the case. If you play clean baseball, you don't have to be as talented. You allow the other team to ultimately beat themselves. And it's a real thing in baseball. By the way, I want to go back. I asked about Pujols and not walking all the time. And this was when both Pujols and Trout had kind of reached the peak of his powers. This was back in 2021 through 1,252 games for both players. Trout, 304 batting average, 418 on base, 582 slug, 1,000 OPS, 176 OPS plus. Albert, in the same amount of games, hit 334 to 304, 425 on base to 418 slug, 624 or 418 on base, 624 slug to 582 slug, 1.049 OPS to 1,000. But he didn't have an OPS plus as good because Trout, well, he didn't have as many extra base hits, didn't have as many home runs. Albert had 991 RBIs to 798, but Trout had walked 838 times to Albert's 707. Trout was considered a better player by WAR, even though Albert had scored more, delivered more hits, had more extra base hits, more home runs, more RBIs. Trout had walked so much more. He was considered a better player than Albert was, only because Albert got his bat on the ball and drove in runs.
I also think it's interesting that TLR brings a guy like David Eckstein, who you hear 280 and you're like, man, that right now that'd be pretty good. But when you bring in the analytical aspect, David Eckstein is a 280 career hitter. Do you know what his career OPS plus is?
I'm going to go with 115.
87.
Really?
He's
below average.
He's 13% below an average hitter while being a 280 hitter, because his OPS isn't very high and his slug, his OPS was only his OBP was only 345, slug of 355 with an OPS of 701. So that's and again, I'm not saying that OPS plus is correct about how they're grading him. I'm just saying that's where a little bit of the nuance kind of evaporates.
Samuel Howe, a hard 9, Randy. Yep, that was part of it, man. They played relentless baseball under Tony. And one more quick note here before we get to the Fenton Bar and Grill. Some managers use the numbers way too much rather than the eye test and how a guy is doing. Example, Blake Snell. I think that, yeah, and Snell never put through never got to 7 innings in a game until he threw his no-hitter last year.
That's insane. That's just
he won 2 Cy Youngs.
That stat blew my mind when we read it last year. Unbelievable.
All right, let's talk about the Fenton Bar and Grill, just 2 minutes away from the soccer park in Fenton, and they have their trash swing special today. Every Monday, you can get 10 wings for $10 between 5 and 9 at the Fenton Bar and Grill. It's real easy to find, and when you go by, you'll enjoy some of the most delicious food you'll ever have. On a warm day like this, their Caesar salad is fantastic. Get some grilled chicken in there. It is absolutely delicious. The tantalizing sandwiches are truly amazing. And you know what? The sandwich I like there is the Reuben. If you like a good Reuben, best Reuben in town belongs to you at the Fenton Bar and Grill. And there you see the best trash swings in the world being slathered up by the signature golden sauce, and of course you can get the ranch, and it is absolutely a meal or an appetizer that you will love. You'll love the staff at the Fenton Bar and Grill too. Stop by, say hi to Megan and Candy and Jamie, the whole gang there. They're sweethearts, and they'll really take care of you at the Fenton Bar and Grill. Learn more by going to FentonBarandGrill.com, home of the trash swings. And don't forget the trash swing special this afternoon between 5 and 9. Try them out at the Fenton Bar and Grill, and when you go, tell them Randy sent you.
There it is. It's Monday. Crucial to go to the Fenton Bar and Grill.
Yep, this is the day. All right. Are we going to get to Chris Long here?
Yeah, let's get to Chris Long really quick, because we've talked a couple times about the NFL, and there's 2 different things happening. Obviously, the one thing was the collusion lawsuit that was settled, or not settled. It was come down to, well, it wasn't collusion against the NFL, but they hid the results from the players in the Players Association, and then you also have the head of the Players Association, the executive director, being involved with the private equity firm, which is causing a lot of questions. And I could not wait to hear from people we trust when it comes to this topic. And one of them weighed in, and that is Chris Long. So this is a clip from his Greenlight podcast weighing in on the issues here and kind of talking about why we need to be talking about this topic right now before the NFL gets back into season.
To cover it is now, but the number one thing, collusion or not, like just the involvement in a private equity firm on the low ski is probably enough to get Lloyd up out of there, dude. and JC up out of there for everything that we found out. And then get a guy in that actually has the player's best interests at heart. And I'm looking around and I'm wondering, like, why is it nobody's talking about this? And so that's really confounding to me. I think it's a sad state of affairs in this country and in you know, with everything around this league, where you got a population who's uninformed generally. I think that's you know, that mirrors society at large.
Yep.
Right? You got a population who's going to knee-jerk side with the billionaires. They're going to side with the corporations. They're not really going to side with the laborers. They're not going to side with the people. And in this case, it's harder to get people to want to side with the laborers because they have 7 figures on their check when it hits the direct deposit, right? So it's really hard to feel sorry for people that are making millions of dollars. I get that. But doesn't tie go to the millionaire, not the billionaire? And isn't this about a workforce?
And so that was Chris Long's point. Obviously, a lot of great points in there, but you know, a lot of NFL players feel betrayed by their leadership, and that's literally the opposite feeling you're supposed to feel when it comes to these union leaderships. And so NFL players have a problem with it. I agree with Chris Long 100%. Again, a great clip from his Greenlight podcast. Check out the full commentary there. He made a joke about we can't let Pablo Torre get Jay Leno over this piece because it's a legitimate thing. It's a big thing, and it should move something in the NFL. Despite the fact that it probably won't. And he dove into the issues with labor with the NFL, which is maybe unlike basketball, which your career is a little bit longer and there's not the physical aspect. You can probably lose a season of striking in the NBA to get fair pay, and you could still have your NBA career. But NFL players never have that issue, and that's what they always run into, is that they can never sacrifice a year or else everything's pretty much done for them.
And amazingly, ESPN reporting today that the NFLPA's executive committee, in a message sent to membership, expressed its support for their executive director, Lloyd Howell, and denied it asked him to resign as it looks into issues reported by ESPN last week. So here's Howell colluding apparently with the NFL to cover up their collusion and the NFL's collusion. And he is working in tandem with a company that has a deal with the NFL to buy into teams, yet the union writes to their membership, as members of the NFLPA executive committee, we categorically reject false reports insinuating doubts within this committee or suggestions that we have asked our executive director to step down. I am absolutely stunned that they would buy in. And like Chris said, doesn't the tie go to the millionaire rather than the billionaire? How the NFL is able to finagle people to agree with them 100% of the time is astounding to me.
So you have the private equity issue. You have the fact that J.C. Treader, the former leader from the player side, was actively lobbying against players getting paid more because he had an issue with Russell Wilson, apparently. And to Chris's point, they need leadership who are actually looking out for the players, because you're dealing with the most powerful group of owners because it's the richest league in the world. And so you guys have to actually work together. You have to use the union, and right now their leadership is failing them, and that's a sad thing to see from the players.
Yeah, and it's amazing that it takes a guy like Chris Long to be a thoughtful player. I have no idea if he has any interest in being a part of the union, but they sure could use somebody as thoughtful as he is.
I imagine it would cut into his paycheck on Greenlight. They're killing it with that podcast.
Oh yeah, he's doing great, and he gets to take the non-football season off. He's and does amazing things for our community. He's got a great thing going.
He's the best.
Yeah, so go to the Chris Long Foundation and see if you can help him out and help his foundation out.
So we'll be talking about this as it continues to go right now, because it's not surprising that the NFL is this corrupt, but it is interesting.
Yep, it is. We're going to wrap up here.
Yep.
Thanks to Tony La Russa for coming on. Thanks to you for joining us. Great job by Wilson and Matthew. Sorry about the. It's kind of like the movie Airplane, where the guy unplugs the lights. That's what happened. Sorry about us getting unplugged. But don't forget, you can listen again on STL Sports Central, and of course, you can always find us on the podcast, any podcast network that you enjoy. For Matthew and Wilson, I'm Randy. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. And until tomorrow morning at 10:02, have a magnificent Monday, St. Louis.